Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, hi, I'm Angie and I'm all about beauty, whether it be makeup, skincare, hair care, and all of the above. And I specifically am trying to talk to those women over 35, over 40 who feel like they've been forgotten. Even though a lot of the products on the market aren't necessarily targeted for us, we just need to shop smarter. So my goal is always to try out new skincare, try out new makeup, and kind of figure out what's worth your money and what's just not worth your money. So if that sounds good to you, I can't wait to do today's video. So I'm looking at some new e.l.f. releases. I'm specifically looking at some new releases from their new Cookies and Dreams collection. I picked up a few products from this collection, including the Cookies and Dreams eyeshadow palette. I was so intrigued by this eyeshadow palette. I have high hopes for it. I also picked up their lip gloss. This is in the shade Brain Freeze. I think this is super interesting. And then I also picked up their No Budge eyeshadow, a stick as well. And then finally I picked up this. I have never tried an e.l.f. sponge before, but look how pretty that is. I just couldn't resist. I thought this was so cool. There are a few other things that went along with this launch. They did do a putty primer that was in just special edition packaging that smelled like cookies. I did not pick that up just because I love the putty primer, but I wasn't in the market for a new one and I didn't need one in the special packaging. And then they also did a lip exfoliator. Again, I love the e.l.f. lip exfoliators, but I wasn't in the market for a new one, so I didn't pick that up either. A few of the products from the line I didn't pick up. I will show a picture up in the screen so you can kind of see. The other product I'm going to be trying out is the e.l.f. CAMO foundation. Full disclosure, I've been trying this out for the last week or so, kind of tweaking it to kind of figure out what works. So instead of a first impression, which is what this other e.l.f. makeup's going to be, I'm going to use this today, but also give you my thoughts on how it's best applied and how it best wears. And then I'm going to be using some other e.l.f. products as well. I do not have favorites in each category. So if I don't have an e.l.f. favorite in that category, I'm just reaching for other drugstore makeup. So I hope that sounds good to you. And if it does, let's get started. So I always start with priming my skin. I know everyone doesn't believe in face primers, but with my combination oily skin, I need to use a primer, and I also need to use an eyeshadow primer. I'm just picking my trusted Milani eyeshadow primer so I can just prime my eyes, and I just put a little bit on each eyelid, and then I'm just going, and you can use a brush to do this, or you can just use your fingertip. I'm just using my fingertip, obviously. And then once I feel like this is starting to blend in, I'm gonna flip over to face primer. So I just picked up the e.l.f. Poreless Putty Primer. This is one of my favorite primers. You know, it's funny, I just did a video about 5 favorite products from 5 favorite brands, my drugstore edition, and I mentioned in there that I don't have many primers from the drugstore that I really like besides this one, and it just made me think, I should probably try out some more primers. What I love about this primer is that it mattifies my skin. Ironically, I've never tried the mattifying version of this product just because I find the original version does what I need it to do, but blurs pores, is not super tacky. Now, I recently tried a different e.l.f. primer. It was their Jelly Pop Primer, which I think is supposed to mimic the, the famous cult favorite Milk Hydro Grip Primer, and I absolutely hated it. I think part of it is I just don't like those really tacky, sticky primers. I just don't like the textile feel of it. And then the other thing I didn't like is it smelled like watermelon, and it was so pungent. I felt like I was sticking a watermelon Jolly Rancher on my face, and it felt like that too. And you don't want to feel like you're rubbing candy all over your face with it being that sticky and gross. That was a no for me. I'll talk a little bit more about that in my favorites and fails for February. But they did also just come out, I think, with a fragrance-free version of that, because I think I'm not the only one who had a problem with the really pungent watermelon scent, but I don't think I'm going to try that one just because I didn't like the texture anyway. So it was a scent problem, but it was also a texture problem. Now that I am primed, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with concealer. Because I'm using a powder foundation, I tend to want to put my concealer on first, which is opposite of what I would usually do. I don't like the e.l.f. Camo concealer. I know it's sacrilege. Everyone seems to like the original or the hydrating. I don't like either. I gave them so many chances, and I just had to accept that this was just going to be a product that everyone loved except me. It just doesn't work for my under eyes. It makes them look crepey and dry, and even the hydrating one, it just didn't work. So for concealer, I grabbed my Milani Conceal and Perfect. This is one of my favorite concealers from the drugstore and just one of my favorite concealers of all time. You know, from that video that I just did, that drugstore 5 products from 5 brands, this was another category that I felt like, oh, you know what? I need to try more drugstore concealers because I think I only have maybe 2, maybe 3 that I would think are really, really good. And I'm sure there are more out there. It just goes to show I need to try a few more. So this feels so weird to do first. So I'm gonna use my new e.l.f. Cookies and Dream sponge. I love this. Now I've never tried an e.l.f. sponge. I tend to be very either Beauty Blender, or I like the Real Techniques sponges as well, but you know, I'm always looking for good sponges, and I love e.l.f. brushes, so this feels good so far. All right, we're just gonna get this blended in. This shade's a little bit lighter just to kind of provide some brightening, and I've got some redness. I've been trying out some new skincare stuff, and I always get a little redness when I do that. My skin, I wouldn't call it like crazy. I wouldn't call it crazy sensitive, but it is sensitive. It does tend to react, especially to a lot of fragrance and some specific ingredients. All right, we blended that in, and you can see that kind of gives me some brightening. Now I'm going to set that. I grabbed my trusty number 7. I do like the e.l.f. Halo Glow loose setting powder, but just because this foundation, I didn't want a lot of glow from a powder, and that is quite glowy. I've never tried the more mattifying powder from e.l.f., but this one, if you've never tried this number 7, it is, it works so well. We're just gonna set my under eye. Ironically, I'm using my trusty e.l.f. I was very excited to try this because in my 30s, powder foundation is all I used, and specifically, I only used the MAC Studio Fix powder foundation. I had tried a liquid foundation when I was younger, and I hated the feel of it, so I never went back. And it wasn't until I hit 40 that I realized that that powder foundation just wasn't doing it for me. I needed to try something different, and I kind of fell in love with liquid foundations again. But I've slowly started to try powder foundations again. I'm hesitant, but I've slowly started to. And so I wanted to pick this up as soon as it launched. Now I picked it up in the shade Fair 120N. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I think this shade is actually a little tiny bit light for me, but the next shade was a light shade versus a fair shade, and I was worried it was gonna be too dark. I've made it work, but what I've learned about this foundation is, you know, it comes with this brush, it comes with this sponge that you put in the bottom. And I have found that when I use that sponge, I get way too much coverage. It is very thick on my face. And because it's a little light, it just doesn't work for me. I have found that using a brush is a better way to apply this. And I actually picked up, this is a Real Techniques brush, but it's more for either foundation or for, you know, cream products is what I usually use this for. It's got a more stipple, more firm, it's got more firm bristles. It works really well for this foundation. One of the first things I notice when I go into this foundation, I don't know if you can see this, but it kicks up a lot of powder, and it didn't matter what brush I was using. This does kick up quite a bit. So I'm gonna start in the center of my face. But you can see it's, like I said, a little light. I can make it work. For me, a little light is better than too dark, because if it's too dark, then I just look really weird, especially with my fair skin. So, trying to get that all blended in. So you can even see the application here was actually a little bit heavier than I wanted it to be. So I'm gonna have to spend a lot of time blending it. And then what I'll do is I'm gonna have to spend some time darkening up my face just so I don't look so pale. I mean, I'm pale anyway, but this is like another level. Let's talk a little bit about this foundation, what I've learned from it. I'll be honest with you, I'm still on the fence about it. I feel like it does kind of attach itself to some dry areas of my skin, which I am quite combination oily, but I put my normal skincare on today and it's kind of attaching itself a little bit. The coverage is good. Like I said, you can build this up to be crazy coverage, but I just find that it doesn't lay on my skin as beautifully as I want it to. And I do have a few other powder foundations like the Fenty that just seems to just airbrush my skin. And I find that this one just kind of gives me a little bit more texture. Yeah, this is worse than usual. This gives me a lot of texture. Well, this goes to show that you keep trying something out. So the finish you can see is really nice, but like right in the center of my face, it is really, really powdery. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that, but look how powdery this is across my nose. It is super powdery. Okay, well, we're gonna keep going and I'm gonna give you my final thoughts. But from afar, it actually gives my skin a really nice kind of soft matte appearance. It's not too mask-like, but up close, man, this is really powdery in the center. Let's move on and do our cheeks. We're gonna start with bronzer. I wasn't gonna use a cream bronzer in this look just because a cream bronzer with the powder foundation, I just wasn't sure how I felt about that. And I don't have a powder bronzer from e.l.f. So I just picked up one of my favorite drugstore bronzers, which is the Butter Bronzer from Physicians Formula. This is an oldie buddy goodie. I just find that it works really, really well. Now, if you are averse to scent, this definitely has like a, I'm going to the islands and I have suntan lotion scent to it. So for some people, that's a big turn off. But this is just one of those no fail bronzers that doesn't look too orange on me, but can absolutely warm up my face. And you can see with using this shade that's a little light for me, this kind of helps. All right, so I got my bronzer on. I got that all nice and blended in, and this bronzer blends in really, really nicely. So I got that going. And then for blush, I have talked about how I'm not crazy about the cream blushes from e.l.f., but I love their primer infused powder blushes. And I just picked up the shade. This is Always Rosy. I think I have it in Always Cheeky as well, which is more of a peach shade. And we'll go ahead and do that. These are quite pigmented, but they're a really pretty matte blush, which you can see there. It's just really pretty matte blush, pigmented but not patchy. These are really, really good drugstore blushes if you like matte blushes, because this is definitely more of a matte blush look I've got going on. All right, I am happy with that. Oh, I wish I knew what in God's name is going on here. Moving on to highlighter. I also do not have an e.l.f. highlighter, so I just picked up one of my favorite highlighters from the drugstore. This is the Essence Pure Nude Highlighter. This is such a beautiful natural highlight. It is just one of my favorite highlights in general, but it's not glittery. It's not like you can see my face from space or anything like that. It just gives a really nice natural glow, especially on top of this very, matte blush. I just love this highlight because it just doesn't, you can't mess it up, because it just gives a very subtle, soft glow. All right, beautiful, love it. All right, I'm gonna do my brows off camera just because you don't need to see me do my brows, but I love the e.l.f. Wow Brow. If you like brow gels, think the Gimme Brow from Benefit, or if you like Boy Brow from Glossier, this is a really good alternative at a great price. All right, I did my brows off camera, and now I'm just gonna move on and do our eyeshadow. So again, I picked up the e.l.f. Cookies and Dreams eyeshadow palette, and I've been very intrigued by this palette. I'm really hopeful that this kind of mimics the bite-size e.l.f. eyeshadow palettes, which are some of my favorite. The formula is just spot on. Now this is a little intimidating for me. I don't usually reach for blue, so we're gonna see how this goes. But I grabbed it because I just don't have anything like this in my collection. I thought I would give it a try. I figure we're gonna start and just put a transition shade right into my crease. We're gonna pick this one right here. I'm just gonna pick a nice blending brush. This is the iconic Sigma E25. And we're just gonna put that right in my crease. And see how it goes. So it blends nicely. It's a little, it's a very milky brown. It's a little lighter than I expected, but kind of makes sense. All right, and we'll put that on the other eye. This is a little bit powdery versus creamy, but it does blend nice. I want to see how the rest of the shades perform. This is quite nice for a transition shade. So I'm gonna go a little darker here, a little out of my comfort zone, and I'm gonna reach for this really vibrant blue. I'm gonna put this on my outer corner. This may be a disaster, but you know what? We're gonna try it. I'm gonna use my favorite Sigma brush, which is their E70, which is an angled brush. I find that if you're doing an outer V and that's your jam, this is the best brush to kind of press that shadow into the outer corner. Okay. This is, I mean, it's bright, it's pigmented, but it is patchy. I am getting a little fallout from it too. You can see down here, I'm getting a little fallout, so we'll see how that goes. All right, I'm gonna grab a more tapered blending brush and see if I can, how this blends out. I think I might have to work this up. Yeah, the blendability of this shade, gosh, it's patchy. It's really, really patchy. Okay, well, we're gonna have to build this up some. And I think I'm just gonna do one eye on camera, and then I'll do the other eye. So I can make this work, but I'm gonna have to clean this up quite a bit. And don't get me wrong, when you're using these really vibrant shades, you know, sometimes, you know, yeah, that's gonna be what happens, but ugh, not excited about that look. I'm gonna use this light blue first on my lid, and then I'm gonna add the shimmer on top, because I'm worried that that shimmer is just not gonna have anything. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this light blue. This is another risk I'm taking. We'll see if it's worth it. Gosh, there's a lot of kick up in this eyeshadow, gosh. All right, this is really powdery and it's quite chalky actually. This is so not what I was hoping for. All right, well, I'm gonna try to darken up that crease because right now it's an absolute mess. I'm gonna use a denser blending brush and go into this really dark brown and see if I can salvage this. Well, kind of salvaged it. Ugh, you can see how much should have done my eyes first. Finally, I'm gonna use this shimmer shade on my lid and we'll see. I'm gonna use a lid brush for this. I'll be honest with you, this is my favorite shade. That's my favorite shade of the bunch. All right, I'm gonna clean up this mess, do my other eye off camera, and we're gonna talk about it. All right, you guys, here's the finished eye look. I had to do a lot of work to make it look like this, and this is just not what I was hoping for. I'll talk a little bit more about my feelings at the end. I did put on some mascara. I did grab the Big Mood mascara from e.l.f. Their other one, the Lash It Loud, is not one of my favorites, but I do like this mascara. And then to line my under eye, I used the new Cookies and Dreams No Budge eyeshadow. This is in the shade Cookie Lover. This is just a really nice dark brown, so I was able to smudge it out on my lower lash line. I have not used this on my lid. I'm gonna try to work with this as well, and I'll give you an update on how I feel about it at my February favorites and fails. Last thing to do is just lips. I grabbed one of my Hydrating Core Lip Shines from e.l.f. This is the one with the little heart in the center. I figure we'll put this on first just because the lip gloss I bought is that kind of blue shade, that light blue, and you know, on the lips by itself, it's gonna look kind of weird. My thought is that it may be able to provide some coolness, like cool up a lip look. I have this in the shade Happy, and then, like I said, this is in Brain Freeze, and this is what I was talking about. It's kind of this cool look, so I wanted to put it on top of something just to see how it felt on my lips. Yeah, just kind of cools it up a little bit. Feels like just a nice lip gloss, not too sticky. We'll see how it wears. I do like the look of it. You know, for an inexpensive lip gloss, this is nice. So I'll take my hair down. This is the finished look. I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Let's break down a little bit on the different products. I unfortunately feel like a lot of these just didn't work. I had higher hopes for this launch. Now, obviously, if you are in the market for a poreless putty primer, you know, the special packaging with the little cookie and it smells like cookie would probably be a good choice there. I am still figuring this out. If you look at my look today, I don't know if you can get close enough to see, but I am so powdery through this T-zone. It's crazy. And I don't know if it's just, again, putting too much on, even though I tried a different approach. I'm gonna keep working with this, but I have found a few other powder foundations that don't do this. And maybe it's because it's too light of a shade, but at the same time, it's not that light on me. And yeah, this just accentuates everything I've got going on, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. So I'm gonna keep working with it, and I'll give an update at my February favorites and fails. But so far, not impressed. Moving on to this eyeshadow palette. I mean, I don't know if you can see this, you guys, but can you see how much is kicked up in these pans? That's from using it once. Fallout is insane. Make sure you do your eyes first if you're gonna use this. This shade, the shade that honestly upset me the most was this one right here. I expected it to be creamy. I expected it to be pigmented, and I found that it was not creamy, very patchy, and very difficult to blend out, and it blended out very, very patchy. So I had to keep layering and layering and layering, and frankly, it didn't look better and better and better like it should. This was a huge disappointment because frankly, this is why I bought this palette, was this shade. These shades, the transition shades, they're okay, but even this highlight shade, I tried to put that right under my brow bone, and it didn't work at all. And I'm like, that is crazy to me that they couldn't figure out just a nice brow bone highlight to work. The one shade that I did like in here is actually this one right here. This is a typical shimmer that I would expect from e.l.f., especially in comparison to the bite-sized palettes. So I don't think this is the same formula. If it is, I am crazy, but I don't think, especially the mattes, are the same formula. I definitely don't think this is the same formula as we get from those bite-sized shadows. And this eyeshadow palette was just a disappointment to me. And then I'm gonna work more with this eyeshadow pen. Like I said, I used it to line today and it worked just fine, but I might try it on my lid and see how I feel about it. And then this lip gloss, I don't think there's anything special about it. I do think it gives this nice kind of bluish tint to this color I have underneath, so that's kind of cool. but it's an okay lip gloss. But I do love this sponge. This makes me happy. This is a really nice sponge. I'd never tried e.l.f. sponges before. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Unfortunately, you got to see me a lot going, which I never like to do with makeup. But you know, unfortunately, sometimes that happens. And my goal is to try to find products that are worth the money. Even if they're affordable in drugstore, they still have to perform like high-end. They still have to perform well. And these just don't. At least I'll keep using them, but unfortunately they're just not what I had hoped they would be. So I hope you stick around and watch some of my other videos and like this video. Coming up, I've got a video using a bunch of new Tarte makeup, their spring launches, and their new foundation, which I'm very excited about. And then I'm also going to do the part 3 of my 3-part series of 5 products from 5 favorite brands, this time looking at high-end makeup. I hope to see you guys soon. And until then, bye guys.